The irony of Chaitin's work is that he is using the tools of advanced mathematics to prove that mysteries like inspiration and insight must be real, that they come to us from outside the self and the logic of the left hemisphere, and correspond to how artists describe the thing we all have at times: inspiration.
There's this kind of deep cave at the back of the head, and what we're doing when we're writing is bringing a feeling, an inarticulate feeling, more nearly towards the front of our minds, and as it approaches the front of our minds, words begin to attach themselves to it. So writing, making something, starts with an inchoate feeling, strictly a feeling. And what you end up with in the poem is a kind of washing line on which the words are hanging, and those words both describe, as nearly as they can, though they never do it adequately, this thing which is in the back of your head and that you're trying to bring forward. And that inarticulate back of the mind feeling is where soul lives. Oddly, while that's actually going on, I think you are largely unconscious. While we're actually on the job, if you like, actually with our hands on the page writing the thing, or painting it, or doing the complicated mathematical equation, whatever it might be, that we are sort of blank to ourselves, but that when we've done it and seen how it's worked, if it's worked well, then you can see that that's what's happened. I think it is my experience that I'm in a sense blank to myself. It's only later that I can see it. In other words, once again, I can't report on it exactly.
This strange absence of self in the creative and intuitive process echoes the Buddhist belief that the non-self is more important than the self of the left hemisphere. Some Western mind scientists are trying to marry these strands together to reach a better definition of what makes us who we are.
There is a certain feeling on the part of the self that everything interesting that goes on, everything that is done, every behavioral decision is made by the self. But I think in an important way that the bit of the brain that does the talking isn't the part of the brain where the most interesting things occur. My own view is that the moments of insight or creativity, which I find most interesting, are those which are probably happening far off somewhere in the parts of my brain where I'm simply not aware of them until they bubble up as an almost completed thought or a partial insight, which I may then be able to sharpen or hone through the part of me that does the talking, as it were. When those two are combined, you get something very powerful.
The brain, there's the part of the brain that leads to bridge building and computers, and unfortunately accounting and inland revenue and the complications of the legal system. And then there's the part of the brain that has poetry and art and perhaps religion or spirituality, if you have those feelings, you know, that deals with art galleries, the part of you that falls in love, the modern world, modern education has trained us to emphasize this part of our personality, the rational part, the reasoning part, the mechanical part in a way. It's done great things. You have bridges and computers and modern technology, but I think this part is even more wonderful. You need them both.
Certainly there's an important role for the self, otherwise it wouldn't have evolved in the first place. But it didn't evolve to create brilliant insights or music or art or poetry. It evolved to do more mundane things like identifying food and communicating efficiently with other members of our species. So it's not surprising that the self, which is doing these more mundane activities, but doing it in particularly efficient and highly effective ways, it's no surprise that that self isn't the same thing which produces the brilliant insights or the moments of creativity.
Consciousness, by this definition, is that other thing. Not just being alive, but those things we have always felt the soul gave us. Inspiration and insight beyond logic. Roger Penrose is not religious, and he does not believe in an immortal soul. But his search has taken him very close to the language of religion.
Well, as a scientific problem, the consciousness problem is the more profound, because we have no clue. Whereas the embellishments of that problem, if you like, and the sort of self-reflective aspect you can't even get started on until you've got consciousness there in the first place. The consciousness is a gift. You can think of it that way, perhaps. Consciousness is a gift in the sense that, well, we wouldn't be here without it, and it's given to us. What I mean is that, you know, we come into this world and we seem to possess this thing of consciousness. Whereas the ability to reflect on one's own consciousness is something you've done yourself. You've thought about this, you've thought this through, in a sense. I mean, if you were a deity trying to design a universe, what ingredients would you have to put into that design for a universe in order that these beings in it actually have consciousness? We haven't the remotest clue.
I think that the science of the future, which is going to deal with complex systems, not with the hydrogen atom or the solar system, it's going to deal with things like us, hopefully, if we're lucky and we get to understand that, is going to deal with the notion of information as an absolutely fundamental notion. And I think the soul, if there is such a thing, I think is probably closer to information than it is to traditional physics that thinks about matter.
Faced with a gap in our knowledge, whether it's the missing physics of the atom or the missing element in our understanding of consciousness, one recourse is to do better science. Bad science is to say because your theory can't contain it, it can't exist. And soul is the word that has always reminded us that we are larger than any theory.